Trying to choose the right expertise, using just the expertise tab for guidance, can be about as confusing as trying to run this maze to find our tier list. I know I'll put it around here somewhere. Oh, and there we go. There is our tier list. Do I regret building for 5 hours just for that intro? Absolutely not. But anyway, we're going to be building a tier list of all the expertises. However, it's going to be slightly different this time because we actually have 2 sets of every expertise, one for the early game and one for the late game. Now, for the purposes of today, early game is before level 50 and late game is after level 50, which is controversial. But why did we pick that? Because you get one of these lovely neuralizers at level 50 from doing the quest book, and this will reset all of your expertises, giving you another shot at creating a good setup. So now that we've established the ground rules, let's jump straight into it with our first expertise. So let's start with everyone's favourite early game expertise, Bounty Hunter. So the Bounty Hunter expertise just revolves around this lovely bounty table. You get all of your little tasks and you get rewards and XP for completing it. However, when you complete a bounty, you actually get a cooldown before that bounty refreshes and goes back into the available pile. Now this gets even worse if you decide not to complete it, because if you abandon an active bounty, you'll see it actually goes on cooldown for 8 hours instead of the 2 hours. And 8 hours is a long time. But if you start investing in Bounty Hunter, then these wait periods come down quite dramatically. Level 1 reduces that 2-hour wait time down to 30 minutes. Level 2 will reduce your abandon time to 30 minutes. Now it is weirdly glitched. It says 8 hours, but if you come out of it and go back in, it will be 30 minutes. And then level 3 is where it gets really spicy, because level 3 allows you to activate not 1, but 2 bounties at the same time, which is pretty incredible because that means that while you're in the vault, you can be working towards a completion goal and an item collection goal, getting twice the rewards and twice the XP. Now the actual rewards are nothing to be sniffed at either. You can get a lot of early game resources, you can get some vault armor, and you can also end up with some knowledge essence. And especially early game, you can get a lot of resources from the bounty table that might take you a really long time to get in the vault. So for the early game, there's only one place that Bounty Hunter can go, and that is going straight into S tier. It is fantastic. You get a lot of XP and you get a lot of rewards, and being able to double the amount just makes things a lot better. However, it does start to fall off a little bit later game, because the longer that you play the game and the better you get at the vaults, the easier it is to get the items that you would get from the bounty table. Now, it's never a bad thing to get extra resources. However, that expertise can be better spent in other places. So that's going to drop the late game Bounty Hunter down a couple of tiers, and we're going to put it in B tier. It's still good later game, but it shouldn't be the top of your priority list anymore, whereas early game, it is absolutely fantastic. So for this next one, we're going to need to go into the vaults, because we're going to be looking at bartering. Now, I just need to find my way out of this maze in order to get to the portal. I don't think you guys quite realize how big this maze is. So as you're running around the vaults, you will occasionally find this door here, which is the door to a vendor room. Now, when you open it up, it will generate a little shop style thing where you can buy different items. And as you can see, you can get a rare vault shield in here, which is pretty good, but for 29 gold. So this place will eat up your gold quite quickly. And you can come downstairs and there's another shop pedestal here as well. A mod box for 6. Now, some of these are good value, some of them are not so good value. However, when you find some good ones, they are exceptionally good. So for example, in this one, you can get an inscription for, I want to say, a dragon room on that one. You can get a seal of the confectioner for the new cake vaults, and you can also get yourself a fundamental focus to reroll your implicits. Now, you start running out of money very quickly if you start buying all of these things. In this one alone, you've got 70 gold that you'd need to spend to get everything, which is quite a lot of money. However, this is where bartering comes in, because bartering reduces the price of these pedestals, but in a weird, confusing way. So your first point is going to give you a 25% discount, and your second one is going to give you a 50% discount. So if we get our 2 points in here, and then go and buy our seal of the confectioner, you can see that it says it's 26 gold, but it only took 13 gold off of us. See, I told you, confusing. But given that you can get some absolutely fantastic things and a fundamental focus for 5 gold is pretty good value, I would say it is definitely worth picking this up regardless of where you're at during the game. Now I know a bunch of you are going to disagree with me here, but I'm going to put early game bartering in A tier purely because you don't actually have that much gold, and then when you get to late game it's going up into S tier. So one of the main reasons I'm putting it up in S tier late game is because of treasure keys. Treasure keys are insanely good, and being able to get them for half price is fantastic, and also being able to get inscriptions for half price is never a bad thing either. Hang on, do you guys hear that? It sounds like the maze is trying to tell you something. Wonder what that could be. Don't forget to subscribe. So now let's look at the early game player trap, that is the experienced expertise. Now, I'm sure a lot of you watching have picked this up and gone, you know what, this is a fantastic thing. I get bonus experience. Because that's what this does, and it's not insignificant. You get 10 times, 20 times, or 30 times experience. And if you have got 3 levels in expertise, being able to just kill a zombie will actually give you a decent amount of experience. As you can see, we just gained about 7 levels from 1 zombie. But the question is this actually useful? And is it worth your expertise points? Well, no. No, it's not. You could just quite easily build an XP farm and get this done pretty quickly. There are some very niche uses for this, for example, building a Britannia XP farm, but in general, it's really not worth doing, especially when you're going to need to give up something like Bartering or Bounty Hunter in order to get it. So this one, regardless of whether it's early game or late game, is going straight into D tier. Just go and build a better XP farm, and then, yeah, problem solved. Speaking of traps, Lucky Altar. Now this one seems really good on the surface. It's going to give you a 10, 20 or 30% chance to just completely make a crystal for free. And that would be great if crystals weren't insanely easy to complete. Let's be honest, is it going to be a major inconvenience for you to get 2 dirt, 8 leaves, 1 copper and 5 sticks? Bearing in mind, it's only 1 in 10 of these that auto-completes for you, I'd say there's really not much benefit to having this at all. Now that being said, an argument can be made that because you're very early game, some of the things that come up are a little bit more difficult to get. For example, if we're rolling a level 30 and we start needing rabbit hide, snowballs and dripstone, things get a little bit more complicated. So yes, it might be slightly nice to be able to avoid these. However, the earlier in the game you are, the less complex recipes you get, and the later you are in the game, the more farms you'll have, so you'll probably have all of this stuff lying about anyway. So regardless of what stage of the game you're in, we're putting Lucky Altar in D tier as well. It really is a trap just like Experienced is. It's not that good in the slightest. So C tier is looking a little empty. Let's go grab ourselves a C tier expertise, and I think Fortuitous Finesse is going to be the way to go. It's also one of the hardest ones to say for me. I'm not quite sure why, it just is. But I've actually already done an entire video on why this expertise is not as good as you think it is. If you have a look at my why you should be crafting vault gear video, it will go into a lot of details. But the cliff notes here for you. You should basically be crafting your vault gear. It's very, very difficult to get a legendary modifier on Vault Gear, even with this expertise on, and that's without even considering all of the legendaries you'll get that you don't even want. So getting one that you really, really need is very difficult. And we also had a bit of an interview with Iskal, and he went over the fact that the legendary modifiers are great, but they're only really there for min-maxers anyway. And for all of those reasons, I'm putting this in C tier for both early and late game. I think that C tier is great because it's not a complete trap. You do get some benefit from it, but it's really not that good. You should go and craft your Vault Gear instead. Okay, so I said craft Vault Gear too many times, and now we need to talk about Artisan. Now, Artisan is used, surprisingly enough, with the Artisan tables. So you probably already know that the Artisan station uses focuses to re-roll the stats on gear, but did you know that there is a thing called crafting potential? Crafting potential is basically how much it costs in order to re-roll your gear. The higher the potential, the less it costs. Now, what Artisan does is it gives you a 20, 40, or 60% chance to not reduce your crafting potential when you're reforging your gear, which essentially means that re-rolling your gear becomes a lot cheaper. So what I've done here is I've set up 2 identical Artisan stations with the exact same piece of vault gear in it, and what we're going to do is we're going to re-roll this gear 20 times and then look at what the cost is between them, one with Artisan and one without. So the first one, it starts with 32 potential, and we have 1 focus, 4 plating, and 15 bronze. And now after we've re-rolled it 20 times, it's at minus 27 potential, 82 bronze for a reroll, and 9 plating. And now, if we get our 3 levels in Artisan, we can see that when we go to this one, it's actually only 28 bronze and 4 plating. So that's basically half price for the plating and a third of the price for the bronze, meaning you can reroll your gear a lot more without it being super expensive. And I think for that reason, I'm going to be sticking the late game in S tier, absolutely no doubt about that. However, the early game, it's kind of difficult between A and B. I think it's not as powerful as Bartering. It's probably in line with the bounty table. So I think we'll put it here for now. I think that I'm happy with that. That may change later on. We'll see what happens. It kind of needs to go in between the two, really. But I absolutely love Artisan, and on our live stream, it was one of the first things that I went into, and I did not regret it at all. Although, there is one expertise that pretty much everyone gets first, and for good reason. And that expertise is Fortunate. Now, for you OG Vault Hunters players, you will remember that Fortune used to be a specialization of Vein Miner. However, now it has been moved over to the Expertise tab. So what I've set up for this test is we have 3 identical stacks of Larimar ore. And we're going to do this one just using a normal netherite pickaxe with no fortune. We're going to do this one using fortune 3. And we're going to do this one using fortune 3 plus 2 levels of expertise. Put your guesses down below on how much you think we're going to get out of each stack. They should be stacks of 32 if I've counted correctly. So give it a go, see what you think. Okay, so first tower, just using normal pickaxe. Granted, it's got efficiency on, but let's do this and see how many we get. 17. 17 out of 32 is basically half of a Larimar for every one that you do, so not ideal. Now we'll do just the fortune pickaxe. Let's see what we end up with this. This should be significantly more than we got with just the normal pickaxe. 49, so about 1.5 for everyone. So that's pretty good. 49 out of a stack of 32, not bad at all. Now let's see what the extra levels in Fortune do from Fortunate. Stack our lovely 2 points in here for an extra 2 levels of Fortune, and let's start mining down on this one. And this is already looking a lot more promising. A full stack plus 25. 89 from 32. That is almost 3 Larimar gems for every ore. Now, of course, if you're running Larimar, this is not overly impressive. However, imagine those were echo gems, and then all of a sudden, you start seeing how crazy this is. And the thing is, you're always going to need some sort of ore, whether that's echo or player gems or even Larimar. It does fall off very slightly at the end because you can do mine room runs, but you know what? We're going to stick them both in S tier because I think they're absolutely fantastic, regardless of when in the game you use it. A lot of people use this as the very first expertise points that they unlock, and I can't fault that, to be honest. It's a really good thing to do. A little basic, but pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about Angel. Angel is a very weird one, and we're actually going to do this slightly differently because Angel is in a bit of a unique position. Angel allows you to craft an angel block which gives you creative flight, but you can't use that in the vault. So, for me, if you are a builder, this is absolutely fantastic. If you are not a builder, then it's not very good at all. It's a little bit of a waste. You can also only get it after level 50, which means that early game, it's not actually available. So what we're going to do for this one is green is if you are a builder, and red is if you're not a builder. If you're not a builder, it's going into D tier. And if you are a builder, it's going into S tier. Because, you know, creative flight. It's pretty cool. Look, we have it here. Whee! I guess that means it's also good for making guides. Anyway, moving on, we're actually going to look at two together, which are Infuser and Mystic. So why are we looking at these together? Well, that's basically because they do similar things. Infuser basically makes it so that when you're modifying a crystal, there's a chance to not get a negative modifier. And Mystic allows you to modify a crystal more without it becoming unmodifiable or becoming cursed. So these are kind of the same thing, but slightly different. And both of them are terrible in the early game, because you're not going to have many crystals that you can actually modify. This is not going to be that useful for you, and most of the really, really good stuff comes online later on in the game. So I'm actually going to put both of them in D tier for the early game. They're really, really not worth using. I mean, actually, I feel kind of bad about that. I feel like they are slightly more useful than these ones here. Let's put them in C tier. I'm feeling a little bit generous today. However, late game, that's another story entirely. So what we're going to do is we're going to just craft up an absolute ton of these catalysts, and we're going to test out how Infuser affects the amount of negative modifiers that we get. And then we'll push it to the limit and see how many we can get on before it becomes unmodifiable and how many curses we get. So we did 20 before, so let's hope we can just do 20 again without it becoming unmodifiable. Oh, it actually became unmodifiable after 9, so we'll test the other one with 9 as well. But we got ourselves at least 2 curses and we got 9 random negatives. So now we'll stick some points into Infuser so that we've got a 60% chance of no negatives. And now we'll keep adding these and hopefully we can get to 9 without it becoming unmodifiable. We've done this like 20 times now and each time it becomes unmodifiable too early. Oh, there we go. We actually did it. And as you can see, we have 5 random negatives, still the same amount of curses, still unmodifiable, but we have 4 less negatives to deal with, which is kind of a big deal when you think about it. That could be wild or it could be shortened. You could theoretically get an extra 4 minutes in the vault by doing that. There's a lot of benefits in having the Infuser one done. But now we're going to look at Mystic, because Mystic, it saves you a massive headache. Now this one isn't an exact science because it is very, very random. However, hopefully we'll be able to get more than 9 before it becomes a problem. There we go, we've passed 9 already. And there we go, we managed to get 13 modifiers on that one, which is roughly in line with what we would expect. So we managed to get 4 extra catalysts on there, which, when you think about it, could be an extra plus 100% living chest. So that can actually be very, very good. Now, feel free to set something up and test it, because I'm not going through that again, but I think this puts this solidly in an A tier, because honestly, it's not quite as good, I would say, as something like Artisan or Fortunate, but it's really, really good. So I think A tier. I kind of want to put it in S tier, but I'm not going to. We're going to put it in A tier for the time being. There's Infuser and there is Mystic. Now, the only reason this missed out on the S spot is because you don't have to use catalysts at all. I mean, it makes your gameplay much easier, but you could theoretically just run more vaults and get pretty much the same effect. So yeah, it's an optional feature, so it drops down a tier. And that's the exact thing that I'm going to do with Divine as well. Now, the difference with Divine is that you can't actually do anything with it before level 50, and for that reason, it goes straight into D tier. That's because none of the god altars or anything show up until level 50, so there's literally no point in doing it. But once they do unlock, it becomes a very powerful expertise. So when you get to level 50, you will start seeing these little altars appearing around the vaults. And when you click on one, it will give you a little challenge to complete. And if you do it successfully, it will give you a positive modifier in the vault. And if you don't do it, it will give you a negative modifier. Pretty simple so far. But there's also an additional mechanic that you may have seen in your interface. And that is the reputation system here. You'll see it says your reputation points with Valara. Now, how do you get reputation points? Well, it's a combination of 2 things. Firstly, you need to complete these altars, and secondly, you need to have some sort of affinity with that specific god. The main way to get affinity is using these charms. In this case, this one gives me a 49% Valara affinity, and that means that essentially there's a 49% chance that I will get a reputation if I complete this Valara altar. The other way is through the Divine expertise. As you can see here, it raises the affinity of all of the gods by 10, 20, or 30%. Now that is absolutely huge, because 30% to all gods is amazing, especially when the highest level charm that I've got here is giving me less than 50% for one specific god. Oh, and they do stack. So if I put the Valara charm on like this, and I then add the 3 points of divine, then I end up with a 79% chance of getting a reputation point. Now, of course, it gives you crazy challenges like killing champions, which is kinda hard to showcase here, but let's see if I can figure out how to do it. So this should be the last champion we need to kill, and then hopefully we've got a chance of getting one of the reputation, which we did not, unfortunately. We got the Valara's Favor, which is what you need to get the buff, but we did not get ourselves a reputation, which is sad, but you know, that's RNG for you. However, I can show you what you would do with those reputation if you get it. You're going to need to combine a normal vault crystal with a seal of the creator, and that will put you in this lovely room. But what you're really looking at are these things around the edge. So as you can see on all of these, there are different rooms. Well, those are both all rooms, but that's a common room, and that's also a common room. But you need different reputation, you get different modifiers, and you need a certain amount of vault gold. So we'll do a little bit of command jiggery pokery, and I can show you what happens when you go in there. And as you can see, what it's done is it's put us into an ore room. There's ores all over the place here, and you can run this vault once every 20 hours, I believe it is, and you can build it however you want. So the next room, it says we would need a Tenos reputation, and it would add the negative wild one, but it would also give us a village room. So we need to have a think about how you want to build this, what reputation you want. It's a very good system. I'll probably do another video on it another time, but as you can see, the affinity stuff is really important. Adding 30% affinity to every single god is going to be huge and definitely worth doing. Now, I really want to put this in S, but I've set the rule now, so I'm going to put it in A tier, purely because it is a completely optional mechanic, and it doesn't really impact your gameplay at all unless you want to do the creator and ordinator seals to build and run your own dungeons. Don't get me wrong though, definitely worth doing. I really enjoy the god system now. So there's only 4 left, and we're going to tackle these pretty quickly because honestly, they're not that complicated. So let's start out with the marketeer, or marketer. I can never tell which one it actually is. Now, this works pretty similar to the bounty system, except for black market items. Now, you can get some good stuff from the black market, although it's very, very hit and miss. I mean, a blank seal is fine, a repair cost fine. This inscription might be good. It seems like it would be good, but we can't tell unless we gamble on it. Now, all this expertise allows you to do is just re-roll what's already there. So as I say, it's a little bit of gambling on whether it's actually going to be good or not. And I guess this just makes it a little bit better. So you can re-roll it, you can re-roll it again, you can re-roll it again, and now you can't re-roll it until it all resets. I mean, it's fine. It doesn't do anything negatively, but it also feels a little bit lackluster. So what I'm going to do here is put both of these into C. I was quite tempted to put the late game into D, but the idea of being able to get treasure keys from the black market and the fact that you get soul shards just passively anyway means that, you know what, it is worth a little bit higher than that. It doesn't really add anything though. You can still use the black market without it, but you just get a little bit of a better chance of getting the stuff that you want. So let's look at Unbreaking and Trinketer together because they basically do the same thing as well. Unbreaking makes it so that your armor breaks less. Pretty straightforward. And Trinketer makes it so that your trinkets break less. Again, fairly straightforward. Now, the only difference is Unbreaking is essentially useless because you get a lot of repair cores from the vaults now. I have not needed to craft a single one in my playthrough, which means that by the time Unbreaking becomes useful, you'll have already leveled up a bunch of times and your armor's probably not as good as it should be anyway, so unless you're max level, Unbreaking doesn't really make too much of a difference because you're going to be replacing your gear quite regularly. Trinketer, on the other hand, is slightly better. You still get trinkets a lot, and as soon as you get the trinket that you want, you are able to craft it yourself again, again, so it's not too bad at all. It will save you some resources though, so it's better than Unbreaking, but it's still not amazing. Unbreaking is going firmly in D tier. I know that's going to upset some people because I know a lot of people like Unbreaking, but it's just not worth it. And then we're going to put Trinketer up in C tier because, again, it's slightly better. However, it's not that useful, especially given that you now get trinkets and trinket scrap inside of the vendor rooms where Barterer becomes even more useful. Yeah, definitely not worth taking too early on in the game. If you've got a few extra points, it's not bad, but it's not amazing. And last but not least, Jeweler. Now this one is a bit of a controversial one amongst our community. I think Jeweler is fantastic. Some of you think it's not worth taking. So let's make our cases. So first thing we're going to do is just craft up a bunch of these gems just so that we can use them for testing. And as you can see, the vast majority of them are between sizes 10 and 30. Now, when you get some in the vault, then they are normally slightly bigger than this. They tend to be pretty good, but they do tend to have larger sizes. The crafted ones, for some bizarre reason, seem to be a little bit better on the size side. Now, one of the big arguments I've seen against Jeweler is when we look at things like this chip jewel with reach, or if we look at this one with ornate affinity. These are already size 10 or 11, which means that you're going to get very minimal benefit from cutting down the size of this. And some of you have said, well, you know what, you should just be throwing the others away or recycling them, and you should only be keeping the ones that are actually good. And that's actually a sentiment shared by Iskall. However, my side of this is to do with the actual modifiers themselves. For example, we have a couple of hammer size jewels, and these are pretty rare to get, especially from in the vault. And when you get a size 30, you don't want to just be throwing it away. However, 30 size is quite a lot to spend on just a +1 hammering, and that's where Jeweler comes in. So what we've got here is 2 size 30 gems, and what we're going to do is put them into the jewel crafting station. We'll do the pink one without the expertise of Jeweler, and we'll do the green one with the expertise. So firstly, we try and cut it, and it's gone. So what that shows is that if you've got a chip jewel with a really good modifier, you should not attempt to cut it, because you'll probably just end up with a gemstone. However, if we now put some points into Jeweler and throw in our size 30 hammer size, we get 3 cuts of this without anything happening. So you now see it is a size 20, and size 20 is definitely worth keeping. Now, of course, you can be a bit greedy and go again. And then look at that, you get gemstone. So there's my reasoning for it. If you've got some really good modifiers, then you want to make them as small as possible, because then you can fit the most of them on your tool. So those are the 2 arguments that I've seen for and against Jeweler, and I think it is a very fair point. Now, early game, you don't have much capacity, so it seems pretty good, and late game, you want to fit as many jewels on as possible, so again, it's quite good, but you guys are right that you should only be using the good modifiers, so I think we'll round it out and put it in B tier. Early game for the capacity, and late game for the modifiers. And that concludes our expertise tier list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand over here so you guys can take a screenshot of it if you want to. I know a lot of you in the comments said that you wanted to see an overview so you could screenshot it in the last tier list. So there you go, you have it all behind me. Now, that's where we're going to leave it for today. If you have not checked out my interviews with Iskall and Mr. Beardstone, I would strongly recommend doing so. We talk about everything from Vault Hunter's development to talking about the YouTube experience and different mod packs. It's absolutely fantastic. Definitely check it out. And we've got a lot more interviews coming your way, including a special builder that will be joining us. But that's all for me. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. I've been Hellfire Mage, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe.